Hello, everybody. Um, Thanks for watching this very special premiere of a remastered On Any Sunday, which, as we all know, is motorcycling's favorite. My name is Mitch Boehm. I'm the editorial director of the AMA. I've been in the motorcycle magazine business for a long time, so some of you might recognize my name. I also helped Malcolm Smith, um, an alumnus of the movie, write his autobiography back in 2015, and I'm sure some of you have probably seen that. Um, and this being the 50th anniversary of the movie is very special. Um, some of you might have seen the July issue of American Motorcyclist, which featured pretty much the whole issue covering On Any Sunday and a lot of background information. I was fortunate enough to be able to talk to some of the guys we're going to talk to shortly about all this in that issue. And tonight we have a really special lineup for all of you. We've gathered four people who were really, really instrumental in the creation of the movie and were in the movie, and their roles in it, the effect that the movie has had on their lives in those 50 years since its debut in July of 1971. The movie was filmed during 1970 and debuted in July of 71. They are Hall of Famer David Aldana, who Bruce called the crazy kid from Santa Ana, California, in the movie. Riding those wheelies and being pulled over by the cops. Always interesting, right, David? David was our grand marshal at the recent Vintage Motorcycle Days event at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Park in July. And rumor has it that David crashed a little bit during the 1970 series. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. So he hates when I bring that up, but it'll be an interesting discussion. Although he never got hurt, so that's quite an accomplishment. He's good at that. So next we have Dana Brown, who is the son of Bruce Brown. Legendary filmmakers both. We all know about Bruce and The Endless Summer and On Any Sunday. Dana has gone and done his own thing with some incredible movies: Dust to Glory, Step into Liquid, surf movies, On Any Sunday, The Next Chapter, and others. Dana was at ground zero when the movie was being filmed and released as a 10 and 11-year-old. And so I'm sure his memory is pretty sharp on some of the things that happened during those days. And hopefully we'll be able to cover a little bit of that here in a little bit. We also have Hall of Famer Mert Lawwell, who starred in the film alongside Steve McQueen and Malcolm Smith. Mert really doesn't need any introduction. Mert's role in the film is just legendary. We followed Mert through the season, the ups and downs, the broken throttle cables or the broken crankshafts, all of that stuff. And Mert had a wonderful history in motorcycle racing, but went on to do many, many other things in mountain bike design and his prosthetic hands and arms business, which has helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people actually get back on motorcycles and enjoy themselves. So that's wonderful. And the fourth member of our panel tonight is Keith Mashburn. Keith, after his racing career back in the late 60s and early 70s, was a firefighter afterwards. And he's currently the mayor of Simi Valley, which is a pretty significantly sized city in Southern California, right next to the San Fernando Valley. Keith, tell us about that crash through the 4x4 in the beginning of the movie. I'm not sure everybody knows much about what happened. Why don't you tell us about the brakes, no brakes, and what it's like to go through a 4x4?
Okay, Mitch, I'd be happy to do that. It was probably one of the most successful crashes one could have because I did it right in front of the camera. So it gave me a good place in the movie. But what had happened is that particular year in 70, there was a rule change where you were allowed to run brakes, or if you didn't want to, you didn't have to. So you had flat trackers out there running brakes and others not running brakes, which created, in my opinion, a very dangerous situation. And I was at San Jose and I was following the late Dwayne Keeter into the first turn. He applied brakes because he had them. Earlier in the day, I had some problems with my brakes, so the tuner just took them off. And he says, "You won't have problems with them because you don't have any." And so I went into the turn a little faster than Dwayne. He hit the brakes. I ran into the back of him. got loose of him, but then ended up high siding, or actually low siding. I started a high side, then low sided, and went through the fence. But like I say, it was a successful crash because there was the camera sitting right there. And if you can't win, crash big in front of the camera and you get in the movie.
Speaking of crashing, let's talk to Mr. Aldana about crashing, because the reputation, David, is that you were a bit of a crasher, especially that season. You have to hurt yourself, and you were in contention right to the end. You want to talk a little bit about crashing and how maybe you're not going, maybe you don't know how fast you can go until you fall off? Talk about that a little bit.
Well, that's sort of true. I had this mentality that you don't know how fast you can go until you fall down. And I was always pushing the edge of the envelope to see how fast I could go. And I kind of liken this to one of those movies that maybe Dirty Harry was known for saying, "Come on, punk, make my day." Well, I can say that David Aldana said, "You don't know how fast you can go till you fall down." But I did fall down a lot, but I always fell down by myself. I know there were people who rode really hard and crashed, and they had a reputation for being dangerous. But I never had that reputation because I never hit anybody or took anybody with me. When I fell down by myself, and I was always just trying to get in front of the next guy. And I thought I would do whatever it took. And it still wasn't good enough because I didn't win the championship that year. Gene Romero, unfortunately, who's passed on, did win the championship. But as you said, I was lucky. I didn't get hurt. I landed on my head, which was probably the safest place to land in those days. I never had to go to the hospital. So and it's funny, Keith got picked out for being a good crasher in the movie. But all the times I fell down, it seemed like the cameramen were looking the other way.
Well, your career is exemplary, and so you didn't crash when it really counted. Maybe you crashed when you were not running up front, so that's probably a good thing. Mert, you and I spoke when we did that story back in the July issue of American Motorcycles. You and I spoke a little bit about how you were approached by Bruce, I think in the pits at one of the races. I can't remember which race actually, but to kind of be in the movie, and you weren't really sure who Bruce was at the time. Is that correct? Can you talk about that just a little bit, Mert?
Well, yes, that was kind of funny because we were at Sacramento Mile, and he comes walking down through the pits, and I didn't have any idea who he was because I'm not a moviegoer. And he walked up and he says, "I'm going to make a motorcycle movie. You want to be in it?" And I said, "Oh, sure, no problem." I just thought it was like another home movie or something. I had no idea who he was or how the film turned out to be, but it certainly was the best thing that ever happened to me, wasn't it?
Tell me about I think your wife knew more about Bruce Brown than you did, right?
Yeah, she did. They were very good friends, and they had a lot of fun together. That was a good mate.
Dana, you were 10 when this thing was starting to percolate in your dad's brain. What do you remember about hearing about his idea, if he spoke of it? From what Malcolm Smith has told me, Bruce was a bit of a quiet guy and didn't always let everybody know what he was thinking. A lot of these guys had no idea that they were going to be as displayed as prominently as they were in the movie until the movie came out. So Bruce was good at keeping things close to his chest, I believe. But what did you know about the movie and his plans for it when you were very young and he was just starting to talk about it and to talk to Steve about financing it?
Well, we rode mini bikes, and we'd go to Orange County Speedway on Friday nights and Ascot on Saturdays and watch these guys. And I remember Dad talking on it. I think I'm going to make a movie on these guys. And to us, like, Mert was my biggest hero, period, kind of growing up, like Mickey Mantle, Mert, and my brother loved David. And that was before he did the movie. So we were aware just simply because, oh God, maybe we're going to meet these guys. We weren't as impressed with Dad as we were with the racers. So I do remember when he started, and I remember because he rode desert and stuff. He was into it, kind of like he was a surfer. So he just wanted to make a movie that portrayed these guys in that sport in the light it should be, and not as Hales Angels or a drag on society, more like the heroes they are. Well,
I've mentioned Malcolm a couple times, and we should probably just we should probably just mention this a little bit. What do you guys, real quickly, each of you, what do you sort of, what do we remember most about Malcolm Smith, who was so prominent in the movie and might be watching tonight? Hello, Malcolm, if you are, and Joyce. Tell us your, let's get maybe a famous little, your best story on Malcolm during the movie or something like that. David, why don't you start?
Okay, thank you. Actually, I knew Malcolm before the movie because in Southern California, we used to ride what we call these Grand Prix races. They were like long lap motocross races that were maybe 150 miles long. And I remember chasing him, and I was thinking to myself when I was a beginner motocrosser, Grand Prix rider, I can keep up with this guy. This guy, he looks old. And I tried to keep up with him, and he just had this way about him that he just inched away. He didn't just pull away and put like 100 yards on me. He just kind of inched away, an inch, two there, 3 or 4 inches here. And before I knew it, I saw less and less dust. And before the race was over, he was in the lead, and I was, back 15th or 15th, 16th position in the back. But one thing that the movie did capture about Malcolm, which is very, very true, the demeanor that you see in the movie, that nice, easygoing kind of guy, is the way he really is. He never changed. The movie didn't make him any more or less, approachable. He was just a really all-around nice, good guy. And I'm ashamed he's not here with us because he would have a lot to add to the story.
Absolutely. Mert, do you want to comment on hanging around with Malcolm a lot? Tell us about those the last of the movie scenes there when you guys were just palling around and riding around and having fun. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was kind of funny. One night we're at Bruce's house after doing some filming. We're talking, and we're talking about each other's racing. And Malcolm thought I was crazy because Speedway, that was too fast. He did not like it like that, too intense. And I was the opposite. I says, what you do is crazy because you're going over the hill. You don't even know what's on the other side. At least I know what everybody's trying to go the same direction. So Bruce thought that was funny. He laughed about that a lot. That each of us thought that the other guy's races was more dangerous than his own.
Dana, what do you remember about Malcolm in those days? I know he and your dad were palling around and buying motorcycles together and doing some fun stuff. And
yeah, from then I just remember what a gentleman he was and how nice. And years later, I was doing Dust to Glory in Baja, and his son's a great racer. And we ran into each other, and he kind of said, hey, you want to shoot at this orphanage? We're going to give these orphans a ride. And it's an orphanage that he helps support. Like and there's a scene in Dust to Glory, and that's 100% Malcolm. He suggested it, and we did it. And you see him riding around with these kids, and he's just a lovely guy. He does so much more, like especially down there, that people just don't even know about. Gives his time and helps raise money and helps people. And that's kind of, besides being a hell of a racer, he's also that kind of guy as well.
More along the lines like David, I'm a Southern California guy and rode all the races here in Simi Valley. We have the famous Corriganville or Hopetown race, a Grand Prix like Dave described. And I was younger, but always looking up to Malcolm. And what stands out in my mind about Malcolm, he could take the roughest trail and smooth it out. Somehow he found the easiest way to go through the roughest terrain, or at least he made it look easy. And like David was saying, he made it look easy as you're watching him from behind disappearing. But and aside from that, just like the others said, Malcolm was a true gentleman, would talk to anybody, and was very kind, and it continues to be that way today. I don't see him very often, but when I do, it's always a pleasure. It's a hug. It's a, gosh, good to see you. How you doing? He hasn't changed a bit in my mind, and I just enjoy being in his presence.
yeah, that's well put. We got a couple of questions from the audience. One of them was, and I know a little bit about this. One of them was the bike catching fire in the desert real or staged? And obviously staged, but there's a good story there. I guess the guy who was involved, I wrote about him in the book, in Malcolm's book. I forget his name, but he was the the CEO, the general manager of a really high-end seafood restaurant up and down California for a long time, a friend of Malcolm's, a friend of Bruce's. And that motorcycle, you know, you just assume it just burned to crisp, but Malcolm grabbed it. He told me this story. He says he grabbed it. They put new tires on it. They had it repainted. The motor was blown up before they did it. That's why they lit it on fire, because it was already kind of I think the rod was hanging out of the bottom of the motor or something. So Malcolm fixed it up and sold it. And he said, boy, that bike is out there. It's a pretty famous bike, but no one knows which one it is. So it's just one of those crazy things. Another question we had is, was the cow patty for real or a plant from Bruce? The cow patty sort of at the end. And Mert, you were there, so you probably remember. What do you remember about the cow patty? Was it a real one or?
Oh yeah, that was real. Bruce went through a bunch of trauma to make everything real as it could be. And the one thing that he did not want the audience to know was that anything was fake or phony. So everything had to be authentic, and nothing was staged except for that fire. That's the only thing, probably.
Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly right. Tell us. Oh, maybe the B-52 bug or something. That didn't look quite exactly real, but you weren't going to find a real bug like that anyway, right, Dana? So, Mert, tell us about the water crossing thing with Steve, because that was pretty funny. Everybody remembers the water crossing. I'm not sure Steve was quite ready for that. Weren't you guys going to go through there slowly in the beginning?
Yeah, well, Bruce said, told June, he says, my wife, I want you to have 3 identical outfits. And it didn't make any sense to us at all, because we didn't know what was going to happen. So we went through that creek crossing a bunch of times. So I used all 3 outfits of clothing for that splash. So that was fun to do. And Steve he didn't know quite what to think of it, I think, at first, but he went along with it good.
Mr. Aldana has a story about not wanting to go to the premiere in Los Angeles, even though he lived there and was invited. But there's a reason he didn't go. So, David, can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I shared that with you in Ohio a few months ago, and I had heard the movie was coming out, and I didn't really know, like Mert kind of alluded to, we didn't really know what the movie was going to be about, how it was going to turn out. And so I was a little hesitant, a little afraid to even show up, because if it was a flop, I did not want to be associated or be recognized leaving the theater like, that's that guy in the movie. So I did not go on purpose. And then I'd heard from other people who had seen it, how fantastic it was. And I remember going with a friend of mine from Santa Ana, California, to, I think it was Hollywood somewhere. And we did a typical teenager thing. We bought a ticket for like $1.50, and we sat through like 4 or 5 showings that one day. But yeah, at first I was a little afraid of how it was going to be accepted. And as you mentioned at the outset, Mitch, it's amazing how that movie had changed the way people perceived motorcyclists. And you touched on how it changed our lives. It has kept my name out in the public's eye way longer than I've ever deserved. And there have been other writers that came before and after me, but that movie that Bruce Brown captured, that filmed and was able to capture that moment in time, will never be ever seen again. And to be part of it is something I will always cherish and remember to the day I die.
Yep. Let's stay on that for a minute. Dana, did you go to the big launch in Hollywood? And what do you remember being an 11-year-old kid at the time?
I remember, I don't know if I went there or not. I remember like Dad's office was maybe a block away from the house we grew up in. So we'd go over to the office and we'd see cuts of the film, and we've been watching it for a year. I would imagine he probably left his home, so it was just like a less of a pain in the ass. But we definitely went and saw it in the theaters. I grew up in Dana Point, and they used to have a drive-in movie in San Juan Capistrano. It's not there anymore. And I remember On Any Sunday played there, and all my friends, it was like, that was better than Hollywood. The movie played at the San Juan Drive-In was like this incredible seal of approval of a big-time film, you know? So I remember going to the San Juan Drive-In. I'm not so sure about the premiere.
Let's talk about Steve a little bit. Dana, what do you remember? I mean, was McQueen coming to your house and hanging out with your dad at the time, and you were a little kid, or did you have any interaction with McQueen back in the day?
Yeah, he'd come by quite often. Uncle Steve and Chad, his son, is basically my age, so we'd ride together, and just a really, really nice guy. And like Mert says, it really was maybe 3 or 4 years later, it really dawned on me what a big movie star he was. I mean, I knew he's a star, but we weren't going to see his movies, right? You know, they're kind of The Getaway or something wasn't our thing, but he couldn't have been nicer. And Mert, you know the story. Mert got hurt and helped. I mean, Steve was just a good man, a unique, real talented, and Chad, you know, carries on his legacy as well as his grandkids.
Sure.
I think one of the things I remember the most about him filming was when he asked us to put the helmet camera on. And back in those days, they didn't have a little GoPro. They had this 30-pound helmet thing on the side of your head with a counterbalance over here with 8 pounds of battery. And you had to share the same helmet. And he would determine your helmet size by how many socks you put on top of your head to fit all the loose spots that the helmet didn't fit correctly. And it was just awkward thing to wear. And then after a couple of times of doing that, I thought, well, if I'm wearing this helmet camera, they're not filming me. So I decided I didn't want to be any part of that. I wanted to be in front of the camera or behind it.
Dana, talk a little bit about the remastering process in general. This movie has been cleaned up, and I don't know the specific technical terms, but what exactly do they do when they remaster films like this and clean them up and make them look and sound better? Because this looked amazing even on my laptop tonight. I can't wait to see it on a big screen.
Yeah, they went back into the original film, which was a positive, not negative, because the way the 16 works. But they went frame by frame and digitally, you know, got the dust off the scratches and made sure everything was enhanced, recolor corrected it, and did the same with the sound. So they just took all the technology you have in the 21st century to, you know, make the film as clean and as close to the original as it was. And it's a time-consuming process with people that really know what they're doing. And Alex Meckel was at Bruce Brown Films, which is the marketing arm kind of all the posters and stuff. He was the guy that he decided to do it. And I can't thank him enough. You know, it turned out really well. And these guys deserves to be seen like that.
Keith, you were talking about earlier hosting the movie, and you guys have got a lot of motorcycle tech heads in your city. The movie is going to be shown all around the country this fall. I was just sent the website address for these fall premieres in various cities. It's onanysunday50th.com. So on any Sunday, all one word, 50th.com. onanysunday50th.com. Check that out. And if you want to be a movie manager in your area, you can. And if you want to go see the movie, and I think you'll want to, this is such an amazing remastering, you'll do it. Let's talk about how the movie affected you guys a little bit. I mean, David, you told me a great story about walking down the street in France or Italy or somewhere, and I guess you were racing a Formula 750 race or something like that, but people knew who you were right out of nowhere, right?
Yeah, it was surprising to me. And Mert touched on it earlier before we started the interview here that, yeah, you go to places in Europe and I'm more recognized out there on the Champs-Élysées, downtown Paris, France, than I am walking down Santa Ana, Boulevard in Santa Ana where I grew up. The movie, got our names out there in the public's eye, to the extreme. I mean, it was amazing to me to be recognized for something that I was doing for fun. And being, spotted, amongst a lot of people, it was surprising. And it was humbling, in some regards, because here I was just a 19-year-old kid having fun, racing motorcycles, getting to see the country, getting to see the world. And then people, recognizing me for that was very strange as a youngster to be put in that situation and have to deal with those things in life. Which, I think we all turned out pretty good. I think nowadays, what some of the kids do and what we did, and, Mert, Keith, myself, when we traveled around the country, we stayed at the same hotels after the races were finished. We all got together and at somebody's motel room and had a real, good time. Where today, I think if we or if people did that, social media would have just ripped us a new one for being bad guys. I think, the honest fun that we had back in the day would not be as acceptable today. And I think, times have changed. Me walking down Main Street in Atlanta, I'm not going to get recognized. I probably wouldn't get recognized anywhere else except in the post office. But the movie did do quite a bit, I guess, as you mentioned, in how it affected our lives. I'm sure the other guys can say the same thing.
And this gets talked about quite a bit, especially, and you guys have already touched on it, but the movie was so well done, and so, I'm not really sure what the word is. It was so friendly and inviting and happy, it was the perfect. One of you said this before. It was the perfect piece of film work at the perfect time. Motorcycling in 70 and 71 was just shooting through the moon. I think bike sales peaked in 73. That was just a crazy, crazy period. Baby boomers were getting involved. That's all of us, obviously. And so the legacy of the film is just phenomenal. And it almost, I mean, this is almost going to be like a booster shot for it. I mean, it's this is just going to keep going. In 50 years, they might be talking about the 100th anniversary. Yeah, I don't know. Mert, how do you see that?
I'm still 29 years old. How else can you do that? Film, and that's what most people still think I am. So it's really increased my longevity immensely, and I'm just so proud to have been a part of it. And just like early on when I first saw it, I was in shock. You know, in fact, I was sitting by Malcolm when we both saw it for the first time, and neither one of us had a clue that we would be that prominent in the film that we were.
You know, motorcycling didn't have the greatest reputation for a whole bunch of different reasons. In the 50s and part of the 60s, that started to change, I think. And I think this movie was a capper on that. It really did say, hey, motorcycle people are real people. They're out having fun. And, you know, they're not throwing beer bottles around in the downtown at night. So just a fantastic legacy. And yeah, Keith, talk about that for a second.
I signed with Yamaha in 1968. And the first thing they did was take me and put me through Dale Carnegie School, and took me to a barber shop. They said my hair was too long. And at that time, the motorcycle industry was trying to change the image, and they were doing a good job of it. And I went to a clothing store. Yamaha dictated what kind of sports coat I would have, and the list goes on and on. They were very strict on your behavior and what have you, because they knew that image needed to be changed. And Bruce Brown came and just built upon that and made it such a success. I want to share with you something. I don't like to promote David Aldana because he's such a good promoter on his own, but I had an event here in town, a motorcycle reunion, and I had a close friend, a Vietnamese fellow that's quite successful, and he brought a bunch of people up from Orange County, and one of them was the Santa Ana mayor. And so I'm sitting here and at this event, and I'm supposed to entertain them, and I knew Dave was down there somewhere in the crowd. So I ran down and I grabbed David and I said, David, you got to bail me out. I'm in so far over my head. I got to impress these people. I got to let them know they're special, and you're going to help me because you're from Santa Ana. So we got a helmet, got it signed by all the heroes there at the event. And then I had David go up and present the helmet to these people. And I mean, these are high up people. The Santa Ana mayor gets up, goes, David Aldana, he knew exactly who he was. I mean, from the movie On Any Sunday, 50 years later, and these politicians all knew who David was and were very excited. And I finally just left the room. He had it, and that goes back to what this movie did for people. And I appreciate David's work because he's a good PR person. And of course, that all goes right back to the movie itself and the memory of Bruce Brown, what he really created for this industry.
Is a wonderful way to sum this entire thing up. So Keith, thank you for that very much. We're gonna wind it up here. I'd like to thank each of you, Dana, Mert, David, and Keith, and also Todd Huffman for putting this together. Folks, go see the movie when it comes to your city later this fall and into the winter. You get to see all these guys and their work, and You get to celebrate motorcycling in really one of the best ways possible, aside from riding, is going to see on Any Sunday. So, fellas, thanks a lot for your time. Thank you for the memories, and hope to see some of you at some of these premieres. I know that you guys are going to get invited and probably go to some of them. I hope you do. I'm sure you will, and the fans will get a big kick out of it. So with that, I'll just say goodnight, and thank everybody for watching the movie tonight and watching us, and have a great evening and a great week. Take care. Thank you very much.
The team at Gather and the filmmakers thank our panel as well as all of you who joined us for this Gather at Home event. Visit www.onanysunday50th.com to become a movie captain for the movie or to get your ticket to an event near you.